I know not whether laws be right or whether laws be wrong. All that we know who lie in jail is that the wall is strong, and that each day is like a year whose days are long. But this I know, that every law that man hath made for man, since first man took his brother's life and the sad world began, but straws the wheat and saves the chaff with a most evil fan. This too I know, and wise it were, if each could know the same, that every prison that men build is built with bricks of shame, and bound with bars, lest Christ should see how men their brothers maim. That was taken from the Ballad of Reading Gaol, written by my literary hero Oscar Wilde in 1897. Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde was, like me, a former prisoner. The ballad was published in 1898 under the name C33 by Leonard Smithers. C33 stands for Cell Block C, Landing 3, Cell 3. I'll come back to old Oscar throughout my ramblings today, and by the end of the series, I hope you come to love him as much as I do. But enough of literature for a while. Let's go on to penology. Penology is described as the study of the punishment of crime and of prison management. Its key aims are stated to be to examine the ethical basis of punishment and the motives and the purposes of society in inflicting it, to make a comparative study of penal laws and procedures through history, to evaluate the social consequences of the policies in force at any given time. So one of the first things we must look at is what is the purpose of sending someone to prison. Prison, we are told, has four major purposes. These purposes are retribution, incapacitation, deterrence, and rehabilitation. Retribution means punishment for crimes against society. Depriving criminals of their freedom is a way of making them pay a debt to society for their crimes. If you say prisoners should be punished, you need to ask yourselves several questions, amongst which need to be, is the punishment not the lack of liberty? And therefore is being sent to prison the punishment? A phrase that is often used is one is sent to prison as a punishment, not to be punished whilst there. And then the other question is, what about the many thousands of individuals who are sent to prison on remand, only to be released with no further action taken against them or being found not guilty at trial? Should they also be punished? So let's go back to Oscar, who wrote in 1898, after his release from prison, to the editor of the Daily Chronicle regarding the Home Secretary's proposed prison reform bill. The bill contained the main reform was that there was to be an increase of official visitors and inspectors into prisons. And he writes, "Such a reform as this is entirely useless. The reason is extremely simple," he says. "The inspectors and justices of the peace that visit prisons come there for the sole purpose of seeing that the prison regulations are duly carried out. They come for no other reason, nor have they any power, even if they had the desire, to alter a single clause in the regulations." So what he wrote intrigued me. I started thinking, why do we work in the criminal justice system if we can't change the acts of Parliament that govern them? In 1898, Wilde says in that letter that there were three punishments authorised by the law of England, and they are hunger, insomnia, and disease. Today in 2020, the average food budget per prisoner is just under £2 per person per day. Hunger. Anyone who is laid down on a 3-inch thick mattress with either wood or plastic slats underneath them will tell you it's impossible to sleep. Insomnia. We are forced to eat 3 feet away from where we defecate. There are currently over 1,000 cells in this country that do not have in-cell sanitation, and therefore a bucket more than often has to be used. Disease. How can society expect a prisoner to be released after his time in jail not angry, not ill, and not mentally scarred, if after 120 years we're still treating our prisoners the same way? Therefore, we ask ourselves, is prison used as a retribution to make us feel better about ourselves? If it's for that reason, then something is far wrong with society. Society is therefore shallow, is it not? Wilde writes in his magnificent letter, De Profundis, many men upon their release carry their prison sentence along with them into the air and hide it as a secret disgrace in their hearts, and at length, like poor poisoned souls, creep into some hole and die. It is wretched that they should have to do so, and it is wrong, so terribly wrong of society that it should have forced them to do so. Society took it upon itself to inflict our punishments, but it also had the supreme vice of shallowness, and it failed to realize what it had done. When the man's punishment is over, it leaves him to himself. That is to say, it abandons him at the very time when its highest duty towards him begins. It is ashamed of its own actions and shuns those whom it has punished. I claim that if I realize what I have suffered, society should realize what it has inflicted upon me, and therefore there should be no bitterness on either side. But that's simply not the case. The phrase, wipe the slate clean, comes from prison. When a prisoner left his cell for the last time, his name and number were wiped clean off the slate next to his door. We are supposed to go out into the world a new man, having paid our debt to society. But society will never allow me to do that. It will put my CV on the bottom of the pile because society has labelled me a criminal and refuses to accept that I may have reformed. It will put my name at the bottom of the housing application lists. Indeed, it will release me from my time in custody with £47.50, an amount, by the way, that has not increased since 1993. And it will tell me to make my own way in life. It will have stripped me of everything whilst it incarcerated me, and it will push me through the prison gate naked. When I was released from prison in 2016, I wrote an article that started my brand new life into working in prisons to make them more human, more decent, and above all, to help stem the flow of body bags that currently leave them. Mindful of that wonderful quote by Dostoevsky, the degree of civilization in a society can be judged upon entering its prisons, I wrote a piece titled My Utopian Prison. It ended with the following paragraphs. My prison would not lock me in a cell 10 feet by 12 feet for 23 hours a day. My prison would not expect me to eat my evening meal 2 feet away from an open toilet. My prison would not put me in a cell with two others when it was designed for one. My prison would not allow me the choice of either bathing or telephoning my family. It would allow me to do both. My prison would not deny me my progression through my sentence due to the errors of denying me access to offending behaviour courses because of budgetary cuts. My prison management would understand that they are not there to judge me. It would recognise that the judiciary has already done that, and that their mandate is to help me rehabilitate myself. My prison would treat me the way that I would want to be treated. My prison would understand that the bedrock of family life is so very vital. It would be respectful in understanding my family's predicament, and it would recognise that they are suffering as well. My prison would be staffed with the type of people who want to make a difference in my life. My prison staff would treat me as a human being and with respect, and in turn, I would respect them. My prison would give me the opportunity to better myself by learning a trade or increasing my education levels. After all, if I'm to be released back into society a better person than entered and on the road to rehabilitation, then I would need to be au fait with modern technology and be able to read and write at a decent level. My prison would release me at the halfway point of my sentence, but its contact with me would not stop there. My prison would keep in touch with me. After all, I've created a trust with my officers over my sentence, and my officers know me better. My personal officer would be there to help me and give me a comforting word or a kick up the backside. When I left prison, there were many officers that impacted my life, and I owe them a debt of gratitude that can never be repaid. These are the people that would staff my utopian prison, and I would leave it a better person than entered. There's so many other things that need to be discussed. However, I fear that most of you watching this will have reached for your Horlicks by now or some other suitable alcoholic beverage. So I'll leave you now with just one thought. How can a system attempt reform when the basic foundation upon which it is built is so fundamentally broken? Over the next 3 or 4 sessions, if you'll indulge me, I will talk with others who are involved with the work of prison, probation, and some of my former cellmates. I'll always refer to Oscar Wilde. If you haven't read De Profundis, try and get a copy of it or download it if that's your thing. And I hope that it impacts you as it did me. I will talk to you from my side of the door and beyond. I'd like to take you on a journey with me to discover how the system works from the inside. Ask me questions, don't be shy. I'll always answer openly and honestly. Ask me about my past if that's what interests you. Ask me about my present, what I do now in jails across the country. And ask me about my future. It'll be my pleasure to get to know you all. Thank you.
Send him down.
So after you hear these words, an officer will then put handcuffs on me and start taking me downstairs to the cells. So now I've just been sent down to prison by the judge, and I want to try and tell you what was going through my mind, or what was through, I can't tell you what was going through 83,000 people's minds at the time, but how I felt and what happens to somebody once they get sent down, because it doesn't just stop there. It's not as if the judge says, send them down, and then I go straight into a court van, and you see on the TV, the court van goes through and goes to the prison gates. It's not that. It is a horrendous waiting period. So what would happen is the court officer puts handcuffs on me, he walks me down from the dock into the court cells, and I walk into one of these cells. Before I do that, my valuables are taken from me, so my watch, my wedding ring, anything else. My belt is taken from my trousers, my laces are taken out my shoes because I might hang myself with those. So all of that is taken, and that is the start of the dismemberment of a human being. So the dignity is now starting to be stripped away from me. I'll then be stuck in a cell, which is 10 feet by 12 feet, and the door will be slammed shut behind me. I'll be given one thing to read, which is a pamphlet of 4 pages, which is the treatment of prisoners by the European Court of Human Rights. Once you've read it once, you've read it 1,000 times, and that's it. You're then stuck in a cell with, I can't explain it through a camera, but the smell and the stench of court cells. And that is a physical smell as well, but it's also a psychological thing. And I'm stuck inside this cell for anywhere between 4 to 6 hours. I don't go to the prison straight away because the transport will take time to get to the prison or get to the jail and take me back. But at this point, you're now realizing something desperately wrong has happened. Something has happened in order for me to be sent to jail. Whether I'm guilty or innocent, or whether I'm sent to jail on remand, which means I'm an innocent individual and I've not been found guilty of any trial, I'm now going to prison. So the tongue starts to swell, the roof of the mouth gets dry, you're not able to see anybody, so it's not as if my family can come down to the cell and see me. That's it. The last time I've seen my family, as technically a free man, is when I was sent down from the court. So you wave to your family and that's it. You're now done for as long as the judge has sent you to jail. It's that the start. The early days of my prison sentence starts in this very spot. You can hear from it if there's an echo. It's the noise, because it's not just me that's down here, it's 5 or 6 other prisoners. Usually you're on your own, but you can hear people banging on the walls, banging on the doors, and that's the sensory problem. That's the noise that, even though I'm today a free man, I'll still remember every single day. I'll remember that noise, and that's where you go from here. And then from here, I would be processed. The door would open. If I'm lucky, I might get some food, which is a microwave meal, and it's not from Sainsbury's or Waitrose. It is a tiny little bowl about this big, which has been microwaved, and I'll be given that and a glass of water. Not a glass, plastic cup of water. The prison guards will come in and pick me up. They'll ask me for my name, my date of birth, because I won't be given my prison number until such time as I get to the jail. I then get handcuffed, taken down through the hallway again and then on to the prison transport. And depending how far away, I can be on that transport for an hour and a half to 2 hours, I can be on it for 15 or 20 minutes. And then I get to the prison gates, and then it starts all over again.